All right, so we'll begin anyway. This month, I'm going to do some design related topics because very often what we find is in our projects, what's lacking is just a basic understanding of some design principles. Like, for example, if you want to make a card for someone, just how to make a basic composition of a card is challenging. Once you see a blank paper, you can't, we start putting up stuff on the blank paper, but often the result backfires and you wonder what is it that makes the same elements look good when you see it as a commercially created card by an artist, and when you make it, what goes wrong. So it all boils down to understanding how composition works, how different elements work in the context of each other's aspects. So I'm going to tackle those kinds of topics this month, starting with print design. And next month is going to be part 2 of print design, which is going to be how to make the surface pattern that we make today into something that can expand into a textile print or a wallpaper or something like that. So go into more application based also. And it's great fun. Not that you need to do it, but if you feel like it, it's a lovely way to expand on artwork. So today we're just going to focus on making surface patterns. So any kind of surface can be treated to create patterns. You have things like wallpaper, you have textiles. So the most familiar treatment that we see is usually a print, some kind of print. But then if you think about it a little more, even embroidery is a kind of a treatment to the fabric or to the surface that changes its nature. So these are different ways in which you can think about converting or changing the existing identity of that surface and adding something new to it, sometimes also removing something from it. So we are just going to think about prints and different kinds of decorations with adding things and composing things together so that it can, oh, just one minute, I need to take this one call. Okay, sorry. Uh, yeah, so I'm going to start off with making some very, very basic patterns and help you to think about more and more sophisticated, more complicated patterns with a very simplified process of developing these designs. Usually when I do this, it's to relax. So this is actually painting time pass, we call in our house. My daughters and I sit together with paint and all sorts of stuff. So even color pencils, crayons, regular watercolor paint, some new material if you have, brush pens, just bring that out, some glitter sometimes, because literally anything can go onto a surface pattern. You don't need to hold yourself back. And the best bit is you can also do it at various levels of expertise. So even if you have a 3-year-old who wants to sit with you and do this, they can easily do it. You can make a more developed pattern and they can make, and it still becomes a valid pattern. So to start off, We're just going to make some boxes on the paper. And in each of those boxes, we are going to create some kind of simplified pattern. So let's start with first visualizing. Even the simplest, something as simple as making uniform sized boxes can be taken up as a task in composition study. So whenever you're faced with a blank paper, just as a habit, always use your hands to measure spaces. Don't just start drawing, because very often we don't realize how far we are drawing lines, how big we are making them. So visualize how big you want your boxes to be, where you want them to be placed. We need 6 boxes, about the same size, but a little size different doesn't matter. But make sure that they sit in such a way that the spaces between them are equal. So here's what you do. You can start off with one box. And this sets the pace or the tone. So you know how tall you want to make it. Width will automatically change because we are not that adept at gauging long distances. But the shorter distances, the eye can instantly catch and tell whether this and this is more or less equal. So make sure that the small distances are close to equal. Now, even in this, I would refrain from using a scale. Even if your line is wobbly, let it be so. Because the contrast between the absolute straight line that a ruler makes versus this nice organic line, and then going further, the more organic shapes and designs that we're going to make will seem more cohesive than the absolute straight lines. The contrast is just too much, and sometimes it just gets very depressing. So what we're going to do now is just directly paint some items. And if we think about the simplest things that we can paint to create an overall pattern, let's take dots. Choose whichever color you want to, or in fact, for this exercise, you could also use up all the previous colors that you have in your palette. So this is a wonderful exercise to clean out your palette and not waste all that color.
Aditi, hi, what color did you use?
I've just cleaned out a section of my palette. So you can choose whichever color you want. In this entire exercise, we are not going to think too much about color till about maybe the 4th box.
Okay.
Okay. Now, in a space, when you want to make a design that's even, our natural instinct is to start from the top left, and as if we were writing text, we would want to fill it. So this is one of the classic beginner mistakes that you can make, is starting painting as if you were starting writing. Art can start from anywhere. So in this case, we are going to start from the center, because the center attracts all the focus, always. And then it's up to us how to distribute the rest of the information so that the eye travels comfortably around. Now, in this case, because we are making a very even pattern, all we're going to do is make 2 more circles on either side, about the same size, about the same distance apart. And now, depending upon the distance you've left, just check whether a part of that circle will also be visible from any one of these sides. It may or may not. Now, a regular repeat would be if I were to repeat the exact same thing, the same motif, to the left and to the top, and so on and so forth. So this is how we repeat things. This would just be a regular repeat. And always pay attention to two things, the distance and the direction. So when we're doing pattern designs, we start off first with one of the important factors is deciding on an element or a bunch of elements. Then you decide on the repeat. So when I say decide on the elements, it means you define them. You decide their size, shape, color, but I'm not going to write all of that. This is something that you just have to define. Then you have to define the rules of how you're going to repeat the element. In this, I would like to say you would think of distance, direction, and one more thing is orientation. So I'll come to that in a bit. So you have distance, direction, and orientation. And these are the three factors. And sometimes you might also have size. You might also have color. So these are the rules for the repeat. So I want the dot the same size, the same distance in north, south, east, west directions, in the same color, and the circle has only one orientation. That is how the repeat is going to be. Now, the reason I'm giving you all of these and just breaking it down is because when you want to think of original patterns, you know what you can play with. So you can say, okay, what if I change the size? What if I change the direction or the distance? How does it change the design? And that's all that is needed to make a design different. Now, in this particular case, instead of a regular repeat, how about we do something that's called a half drop? So half drop means you repeat it, but not exactly the same distance. You repeat the next line, maybe the same distance away, but only half the distance further. So it's taking this whole thing and shifting it half the distance further. So what you get will be like the arrangement of polka dots. So this vertical distance between the two lines continues to be the same. But what has changed is the distance sideways. Here, even sideways, there was no distance. You just go vertical, vertical, vertical. There was no sideways shift. Here, you've added a sideways shift. Now, when it comes to dots, this is easily understood. You don't think of this as such a complicated design idea, right? But as we move further, these things start making a difference. Now, suppose we change our motif and make it into like a blue colored flower, which has 4 petals. Okay, so again, we start from the center, and this time round, you can use a pencil And we can do the same design where make the circles first. I think I can accommodate one more circle on the left and half. So keep an eye on the distance. And we'll repeat the same, just like we have the dots. If I'm going fast, please ask me to stop. If I don't hear moans of complaints, I will normally think that everything's fine and I will race ahead. So these are centers of flowers. Okay. Now we have, in deciding the element, suppose we make the element like this. You have 4 petals. Now there's definitely an orientation over here. We have a north-south orientation. Now we can decide on several things. One is, are we repeating this flower around every circle? Or maybe every alternate circle? When we come up here, maybe let's do a half drop repeat. So these terms give you a language to contemplate, and that allows for a lot more possibilities than a very ad hoc design. There could be even more conditions that you could come up with and give you more options, but it all can build from something as simple as this. They don't always need to have a valid term in terms of print designers. You can come up with your own terms also. If you are a little nerdy like me, and you can also do some research and find out all these terms as are established in the industry. So now we've got distance. We are repeating at the same distance. The orientation remains the same. We are doing only a half drop repeat. So every alternate flower is repeating. Now below this, suppose we continue our repeat this way, another half drop. So here we have repeated the flowers at every alternate circle. And now the next repeat, instead of going the same distance vertically, it'll go half to the right as well. So the same distance, but to the right. So in between the previous circles, where the new circles will come, exactly like the polka dot. Now again, we have more options. So here again, we can repeat technically every alternate line the flowers can repeat, or they can repeat in this direction. So what if we do something like that? Now this pattern will look very like the pattern above. It almost seems like the same thing is repeating. Maybe the distance is increased a little bit and a line of dots has been inserted in between, right? But otherwise, these also will make something like a diamond shape. Now for this, we could also consider changing the orientation or changing the element altogether. And we could make maybe flowers which have a cross like that. So this is on the cross instead of north, south, east, west. Now, if you have a problem drawing it, like you obviously saw, I had a problem. Orient the page at 45 degrees and then draw it. And now here again, we can decide to make this. So this entire row can be east, west, north, south, repeat. And all the others can be the half distance. So here we've tackled elements. We have two different elements. So we have one element that is a flower on the vertical horizontal cross and the one on 45-degree cross. So two different elements, same distance, same size. The direction of repeat is the same. Colors can be different. Now we can come to colors, and orientation has changed. So in this case now, you can choose one set of colors for the flowers which are north, south, east, west, and one set of colors for flowers which are in the other direction. So let's say we take a yellow center for all the vertical oriented flowers. Right, that does it. And also these. Just be careful to wait so that they dry. Otherwise, if you paint too fast, then the color will run. And also, then you'll have to make the color run on all the flowers if you want to make it look even. Now, in the other flowers, we could have maybe a red center. So whenever you're making a print like that and you want to ensure uniformity, one good idea is to draw or paint the same thing over and over. Like first make all the circles so that you can create the equal space around them. Because once you create a flower, then the space around looks very different. We could also paint the plain circles as in the same scarlet. But feel free to choose whatever colors you like. Now, while this dries, I would like to introduce you to the idea of experimenting with color combinations. Colors are a very important factor of pattern design. There are different characteristics of color that can make them work for a pattern, or sometimes they just don't work. So when you see a design, often there will be at least two things that you will instantly identify and probably respond to. So one of them is, of course, the combination of colors. Some colors which are very close to each other, which are called contiguous or analogous colors, which are on the same side of the color wheel. So you have red, orange, yellow, browns, all of these are warm colors, they are contiguous, and using them in a combination generally creates a very harmonious combination. So you instantly see that harmony. Likewise, when you have blue, green, purple, all of those colors are more harmonious because they're on the other side of the color wheel. But very often you will come across a color combination where you will have a few colors which are warm and then suddenly there will be a cool color. And in that case, also you can create a harmonious blend of these colors, which are called either contrasting colors or secondary or contemporary colors, because you can match the tone. So that is the second aspect of colors that can bring a combination of colors together. So one is their whether they are contiguous, so warm colors, cool colors, their nature, or also maybe temperature. Let's say temperature is easier to gauge often. And the second one is their tone. Now, tone and temperature, how can I change? How can I show you the difference? In our color, in our box, color box, let me explain this through what we have. So in this box of colors, we theoretically have three yellows. We have a lemon yellow, a gamboge, and a yellow ochre. So in all these three things, you can tell that these are different because of different aspects of their personality. The lemon yellow is a very bright color. So is the gamboge, but definitely not yellow ochre. So brightness, you can tick the two, lemon yellow and gamboge is bright, not yellow ochre. But between the two, yeah, gamboge is a lot warmer and lemon yellow is a lot cooler. So in that aspect, gamboge and yellow ochre are equally warm, or at least on the warm side, whereas lemon yellow is cooler. So that is the tonal value. And when we say hot colors or cool colors, all these are hot colors because you see them as representative of some kind of heat. And all these are cool colors, barring black. So black and white can be a little confusing. So leave these two, but these seven colors do look cool because you can see cool things with them, like water, greenery, forests, all of that falls in this category. Now, when I teach this in schools, often there will be one extra smart fellow who says that leaves can also be red. So red is also a cool color. So please, we do not want to get into that kind of a discussion. The smarter way is to know that yes, these are hot colors and these are cool colors. So within these 18 shades, of which if we remove black and white, 16 shades, you can do a lot of mix and match of the pure colors the way they are, like we are doing over here, or mixed colors like we have done over here. And you can create interesting shades which can help you build very lovely color combinations in all sorts of patterns. Now, in this particular pattern, we have warm colored centers, but they're both very striking colors. Of that, red also seems to be a more dominant color. Now, many of these things have to be experienced. When I was younger, I used to feel that this is all theory. So you must know theory, and in theory, if red is bright, then red is the brighter color. But it's not so. With in different contexts, different colors behave differently. So I was applying our same school education to learning art also. If in school, if in color theory, you say that yellow is a bright color, I will convince myself that the yellow that I see is brighter. But do not fall for that. There's no such theory, there's no such rule that supersedes what you see and what you experience. It's very important to stick to that, because that is the only way you can be sure that the colors that you are choosing for your palette is something that is authentic to you. Otherwise, you're always going to be looking for either approval or some validation from a source that is very theoretic, and it might become very dogmatic also, that you cannot use warm colors and cool colors together, or you cannot use red and green together. So this is, I would like to stay away from that. Start responding to the colors that you choose. Now, in this case, after we have painted the first two colors, there is always that question, what is going to be the next color that I want to paint? So in each of these, every color that you choose will have, will have some kind of reaction to the nature of the pre-existing color. If we were to choose this yellow and make the petals on the red centered flower, that will look like something else. If we were to choose blue, it will look like something else. So we can try blue right now, blue for the yellow, and then let's see how bright the yellow looks. Now, this is my personal choice. But if you feel you want to add blue to the red centered flowers, because that is your personal preference, please do that. I often cringe from colors which are too bold or too jadak. So I will steer on the border of contrasting colors. Now, this exercise of painting tiny petals is just as important as even designing the flowers. The reason why I do this with my daughters, and sometimes even my students, as painting time pass, is because we are not focusing on the end result, but enjoying the process of painting these petals. So take your time, use the right brush, try and study which petals you painted really well. In a way, this exercise can be very meditative and very um, educating also. And you don't really need to let go of anything, but you learn a lot without having to work towards an agenda. A tip for when you're painting small areas, or generally painting, always choose your brush according to the area that you need to paint. Because a large brush, even if it has a very fine tip, will often use a lot of paint. And if you miscalculate, then a certain amount of paint will just vomit itself on paper. And especially if you've got an earlier painted area that is very um, hydrophilic, so it pulls the color from the brush. And again, these are not things that you're expected to know as much as find out. So very often the analogy I give is when learning art is to see it as um, meeting somebody. It could be like a date, it could be like a business meeting. You're going to do something together, you have a project together, and you're just sussing out whether your team is able to fulfill the requirements or how are their natures, so that you can then have the best result at the best result for your project. So, for example, with watercolor, making flat, regular patches of very deep colored uh, pigment is often asking for too much. So, you should not design a project that requires that. Okay, so this is already the pattern is looking very nice, even as a regular repeat and as now this is not even a half drop. It is a half drop, but it looks like this is just stripes of flowers. And I quite like the white colored flowers. We don't need to color them also. I'm just going to intensify the red here. How's everyone doing? Okay? Okay.
Good, good.
Okay, good. Any questions so far? Any doubts? Any difficulties? Now we're going to take this up in the next class, how to build more sophisticated prints like that. So there's a science and maths to how to develop this further. But what I want to focus on for the next few blocks is just creating a very amorphous design to cover a space where you're not really bothered about repeating the design. So in this case, how can we create a nice, charming design which fills up space and also looks interesting at the same time? But it may not have repeating patterns. So in that case, when we are creating patterns, there are a few things that we have to keep in mind. Usually a pattern can be made with, let's start with the basic of 3 elements. So you define 3 elements. Let's say 1, 2, 3. Each of these elements has to be in a different size. So you will have large, medium, and small. Okay. And then you will have quantity. You will have maximum to minimum numbers. Now these are all related. 3 elements of 3 different size and the quantities that they should have. And all of these, the best or the most balanced are if all 3 of them use up pretty much equitable space. Not completely equal, but more or less equal. So how do we create something like this? Let's take just a nice floral pattern, for example. We can take a simple flower design that will be element number 1. Then we will have leaves, and then we could either have small dots or bugs or something like that. And we'll create a very nice amorphous pattern out of it. So how about making a flower with just a wavy line? I'm deliberately keeping the shapes very loose and unpredictable. This is not even a flower, but it doesn't matter. Now, when I'm placing them, I'm keeping a certain distance and I'm also making them not one on top of the other like we made them over here, but at a little angle off. So either horizontal or vertical, I won't place them. But I'm not really keeping them at a regular distance. The size, orientation, identity, all of that is different. But already you can see that I'm building some kind of a repeat. It's not a defined repeat like this, but there is some pattern happening here. And now you can see how the distance between all of these flowers also looks equal. So here's where a good uniform pattern building exercise begins with. While we're focusing on the positive, which is that which we are going to put in, what we must also ensure is that the negative also breaks up evenly and equally. Exactly like the space between the boxes, it's the small spaces between these flowers which support the design. And the moment you have a large cavity between these elements, it will beg for attention and it'll take away from all the hard work you put making the positive design. I don't know how the brain works like that, but that's how it works. Now, the next element I want to make in this is leaves. So there's no reason we need to make leaves going in any one particular direction. They can go all over. They can also be of different sizes or shapes because we don't have any defined dimension here. So how about I'll make my leaves come out in the space that's between the adjacent 2 flowers. So let's take this flower. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flowers in 5 directions. And I have the space between these flowers. So I have one direction here, one here, one here. So these are open spaces where I can draw leaves. So I can draw a leaf, say here. And then for this flower, I want to draw a leaf in this space. But if I draw it in the same direction as the first leaf, it looks very boring. It's just how it works. So I'm going to make 2 leaves, in fact. Because again, we can make any leaves as we want. The design is ours. Now here again, you have a flower here, here, and presumably a flower here. So you could make a leaf over here. But let's not make it in exactly the same angle as the first one. Let's change the angle just a little bit and make it come maybe... Oh, actually, we don't need to make. We can make a hypothetical or a real leaf coming out of a hypothetical flower from the outside. So that cuts the design. Now, what happens is when you have a repeating line in a design that is not meant to be regular repeating, it's like telling the same joke again. So if I make another leaf over here, and this is not going to be the rule of the design. It's like I told you one joke over here at a party. Have you met somebody like that at parties who will tell you the same joke over and over again? So you have this one joke happening here, and right next to it, again, the very next person who talks tells you the same joke. Very boring. We don't want that. But you could easily change the punchline, and it would still remain interesting. Now, from each of the flowers, you can have either 1 leaf or 2 leaves or as many leaves as you think you want. And you can also do like an overlap, underlap thing. Now, this is again like playing chess with 1 leaf coming here. How about if I make a leaf coming here? These two will clash. If I make a leaf here, these two will look similar. So maybe I should just make a leaf going from this side. And then have a leaf coming from here. So see these lines, how they nestle around the leaves. They don't clash into each other. They're not asking for undue attention. They are just adjusting to each other. And that makes for a very pleasant design. Now, a design does not always have to be pleasant. When you say it's a well-balanced, pleasant design, it also means that if you were to change all of that, it would become a very anarchic design. And that's also a design.
To show you mine, is it balanced or have I not done it well?
Yeah, let me just see it. Huh?
Is it visible?
What do you think? I think it looks okay. What do you think?
I tried to follow that, clockwise, that balance sort of what you had shown once.
Hmm.
So only the direction I feel it's okay.
Okay, so anyway, we won't know till we paint it. And then there's a third element that we are going to make. So usually we've not addressed quantities over here, but usually when you have one large element, which is the flower over here, the second element, which is the leaves, can be small leaves also. So let's make another pattern over here, which has large flowers and small leaves. Now this time round, I want to start somewhere in the center, but not necessarily the absolute center, because that's again a very boring prediction, predictable design. So I'm going to start off with making a very free flower. I'm not trying to make it too even or too regular. Then the next one I can make anywhere. So I'm going to make it here, but I'm not going to make it the same size. It's slightly smaller. Petals can be slightly longer, but they belong to the same category of element. Next one, I can't have it vertically up or horizontally. So I will shift it. Maybe have it somewhere here. And then one, maybe I can have even closer to the first flower. Why not? Now, when you have spaces along the edges, you can always imagine a flower here and create petals that will work well. So I always draw a very light design and then accommodate the flower. So here I'll have petals that come like this. And then maybe somewhere over here. So don't try to imagine that flower and goof up on the structure of the petals. Draw the flower or draw those lines just very lightly around. So this is the largest element. Usually the largest element is should be very little, and then you have the smallest element which should be in multiples, in larger numbers. Now if we want to experiment with this, our leaves can be much smaller and they can be numerous. And the same rules apply. This time round, when I'm making the stalk, I am not making a line straight out, I'm curving it a little bit, and I'm deliberately drawing more leaves because they're smaller and completely filling up the area. I think over here also 2 elements are going to be enough. But here's a thought. The center of the flower can be one element, which is the largest color occupier, I would say. And then you have the petals, which are second in quantity. And the last would be the leaves. So we may not need a third element. Okay, are you getting this? Now, would you like to draw one pattern of your own? Choose a flower design, a leaf design, and maybe just leave room for some dots.
Hi Aditi, I've been listening in
Yeah,
and
Elaine.
just saw the last one. So I've drawn a square,
Huh.
two squares at the moment. I haven't done anything, but this
Okay.
last one, should I do or should I start right from the beginning?
No, no, you can do the last one. You can do this
Okay,
one, and you can
yeah,
also, if you've
do that.
just been listening to the theory,
Yeah,
then you should be able
yes.
to create something of your own.
Okay.
For the print that you're making, it does not have to be only flowers. It can be absolutely anything. You could choose clouds, maybe, or paper boats, or just leaves, or just dots, in fact, just large, medium, and small dots. That's fine as well. One way of doing this time pass is to just directly use paint. So if I'm going to do this large, medium, small exercise, I'm going to choose two blues and a red, for example. And I'm going to make um, first blue circles. And create a pattern inside all of them. Something like an abstract flower. But I'm not keeping the lines too clean because that is how I want the nature of the design. Now around this, I could maybe use um, burnt umber. Let's say what happens if I use burnt umber, and I can create some kind of leaf pattern. Now even these I'm not bothering with overlapping. I'm just letting the line go wherever it goes, even if it has to go over a flower or a previously drawn leaf. Then in this, I could probably use a patch of even yellow ochre. Now, very often, each element can be one color, but it can have a combination of colors as well. I'm deliberately just making one side of the leaves ochre. And maybe I can make a circle in the center with the same color. So I hope you can see how the interaction of these colors is creating a mood. It creates some kind of an association. So those associations are the difference between a design that says a casual throw for a children's room versus a sophisticated pattern for a living room sofa. It's the colors, the shapes, the interaction of all these elements that create the mood that spells one or the other. Now, I have come across many people who are not sensitive to that. And that's why they would rely on the expertise of an interior designer to do their homes, maybe, or also a design firm to make ads for them because they do not have the sensitivity to at least these visual things. But some people do. And in all likelihood, people who are involved in art or doing some kind of art do have an eye. Now, when you do have an eye, you need to be given that legitimacy. So you need to be able to tell yourself, I find a certain color combination works and a certain color combination doesn't work. So while we don't go to the extremes of debating which is a better color between titanium white and ivory white, that's another extreme of being color sensitive. But something like this should give you, should evoke either an emotion or an association. Now, in this mix, suppose what are the options? I could put a blue, a green, a yellow, all sorts of things. I mean, we have 16 colors to choose from. And each of these colors will change that mood. Something else is going to happen. So I'm going to create some very small dots with scarlet. And I'm going to position all those dots in almost like a large space between elements. So I'm going to start off with this triangular space, not put it right bang in the middle of that space, but spread it around first in the spaces between the elements. And then between those and the elements, and then I'm going to reduce the size even further. So I'm just going to make it look like a tiny speck. And again, the whole red color is an option. You don't really need to add so many things. If you like the first one, it's fine. If you like the blue, you could stick with just the blue and that's fine as well. This is, I'm just demonstrating how you can go by size, element, and quantity and experiment with different kinds of surface patterns. Now, when it comes to painting patterns, some rules need to be paid attention to. Light colors before dark, backgrounds before foregrounds, unless the background is dark. A dark color always goes afterwards. The lighter colors always first. So if the dark color is a background, you don't paint it first. The light color has to be painted first, whether it's a background or the foreground. But in the background, say if you have 2, 3 colors, like you have a lemon yellow and you have a sky blue, which are both light, then in that case, first comes the background and then comes the foreground. Because that way you get some options in case the background color is not applied very evenly. You can change the foreground color, or you can also choose to use a wash for the background color, in which case then it might go over certain areas like the leaves, which anyway, if they're green and your background blue, it will enhance, one will enhance the other. Okay, so that's one. When you are making a wash, now I'm going to paint, I think I'd like to paint a blue background on this one. So whenever you're painting a background, when you're doing it in watercolor, make it fairly watery. And in this case, particularly now, because there are so many petals, I'm going to make it so watery that I can go all around these petals. And I want to keep these petals white. I'm going to make these look like daisies. So I don't want any color in them. So as long as the edge of the section that you're painting remains wet, you will not have any patches, or the patches will not look very unsightly. So here's what I'm doing. I am slow. Firstly, I've kept my book at an angle, and I'm slowly traveling with my paint from petal to petal. From top to bottom. So though I'm going sideways, I am applying the color along the top edge of my print. I'm using a reasonably large brush with a nice point so that I can go into these crevices, and I'm pulling the color towards the bottom. Now, while I'm painting on the right, my paint on the left is fairly wet, and that wetness means that my blue color pigments have not completely settled down so that I can move them. When a color becomes patchy, it's because the pigments have sat down, and then when you try to move them, they are just so angry that they don't leave quietly. They want to make a statement. I guess that's like retiring politicians who don't retire at all. So when you do something like that, at least for small patches like these, you can move reasonably slowly. See, even over here, though I have a very odd shape, this will not dry patchy. What I would like you to do is paint very lightly. My brush is barely touching the paper. It's just guiding the paint through all this. And avoid going back an area which is already stained, because that will dislodge the colors and everything just becomes very patchy. So paint lightly, avoid going back on the same area too much. Aim to stain, keep moving forward. And always remember to load the brush before it completely dries out. This process of spreading paint across paper is drying out the brush itself too. So if we don't hydrate the brush, before you know it, it starts becoming dry and sucking the paint that you have left on the surface of the paper. So now at this point, I can move to the area where I have too much paint and pick that up and bring it to the area where I'm running out of paint. Remember, our brush works on capillary action. So you can, after the brush starts drying, you can suck paint from another area and bring it to the new area you wanted painted. Like even over here, I have one little triangle here. I don't need to dip my brush. And it's done. Now, if you have these little blobs, just wipe your brush and with a damp brush, just pick it up very gently. So your hand needs to be very light.
Aditi, I just posted my square.
Okay.
But just tell me, because I didn't catch on everything, but just tell me what the faults are here.
This is the ladybugs and the leaves.
Yes, sorry. If you can tell me what I not going according to distance, direction, and
No,
orientation.
this seems
Yeah.
fine. This seems fine. But what you're doing is
Yeah.
something that we're going to tackle next week, because this is a very, very complicated repeat,
Okay.
becoming
Okay.
complicated. So if you look to
Yeah.
the left,
Yes.
by the heads of your ladybugs, there should be
Yes.
some part of a leaf sticking out.
By the head of the ladybug,
Yeah.
is it? Some of them have got them in the middle and
Yeah. So see the vertical vine, let me just share this now and I'll
yes.
show you what I mean.
Yeah.
So this place, you
Yes.
need to have a leaf coming
Right.
to
Right.
balance out. That's from
Yeah. That's why it's looking empty here.
yeah.
Ah,
And maybe see exactly if this is your the line of your ladybug's head,
right. Right.
you will have
Right.
a little part of the
That
stem
little round thing here.
and
Yeah.
the leaf coming out.
And a leaf.
And similarly, maybe just a tip coming over here, because the space needs to be balanced out.
Exactly.
This
Yeah.
space in between.
Right. Okay. So keep it simpler and larger,
Yeah.
maybe? This
And
too
we will do
small.
this next week.
Okay.
So you will know how to develop
Yeah.
something that complicated.
Okay.
Now in this case, I'm going to
Yeah.
paint the flowers. I'll paint the flowers blue. Why not? And
How
I'm
big
gonna
are
make-
your squares, Aditi? 2.5 or 2?
Sorry,
How big are the squares?
I
Two and
haven't
a half?
measured. I have just
Okay,
made
just
large
about.
enough to fit 6
Okay.
in one
Okay,
page.
okay, okay. Done.
Here now, I'm painting yellow centers for the flowers. These are gamboge, the warm yellow color. And here, maybe I can paint the whole flower yellow. Or you know what? Let's try this. Just make this whole thing yellow. And we make the flowers red and the leaves green. And both of them can have a yellow base. So I wanted to demonstrate really how you can use a nice light background that you paint over fully. So without this painful blue that we did. And then use colors which are contiguous or harmonious with that base. Now the last box I'm going to leave for you to do as homework. I'm so tempted to finish it myself, but if I finish it, then maybe y'all won't do any homework. But having this one empty box might make some of you uncomfortable enough to attempt something over the week. I'm sure I'm going to attempt something. I won't be able to live with this empty box.
I know, exactly. No way.
So when thinking of surface pattern design, now that you know how to put stuff together, all you have to think about is the elements. What are the elements that you can put together? And it's literally as free as any kind of painting topic you may think of. If you look around, just look around your room right now and identify 3 things. Element 1, 2, and 3, and they do not need to be connected. Think of what kind of pattern you can make with that. So I'm looking at things like I have a charger. Then I have I have another charger. And I have wires with different kinds of what are they called? Ports. Then I have my water bottle. And of course, I have stationery. With stationery, you can do a whole lot of stuff. You can do pencils and pens and erasers and sharpeners. We did a wonderful exercise in yesterday's class.
What, Aditi? How can you say things like that?
But this was the kids' class, and I'm going
That
to
doesn't
encourage
matter.
all
We
of
can
you to
also
watch
do.
the kids' classes once in a while.
Okay.
They're just an hour long, and they are available on the same YouTube channel, and they're all public. So once in a while, just go to the Monday Kids group and go through the stuff they do. They come up with such amazing topics. So this was suggested by somebody in class 2 weeks ago, which we didn't do. And then Janita's daughter is in this class. She reminded me. She's like very sharp. She remembers exactly what we have to do. She's very excited about it. So then we just do a whole lot of stuff. I must show you.
Hmm.
It's these things are taken for granted, but they look very nice. Yeah.
Ah, lovely. This
It
is
was
your
so
page,
cool.
Aditi. Beautiful.
You have to try it. And
The sharpener is amazing.
yeah, and it's just this. It's turned
Wonderful.
out really cool. So all the tools, in fact, I showed them some and then I asked them to take some out from their own
Wonderful.
kits. So I had this pencil. I don't have this pencil.
Ah. But you have this brush?
Kind of. I miscalculated the width of the thickness.
Acha, acha, acha. Okay. I thought you have this special brush with a hole like that. Yeah, it is fatter.
They are there. I
Yeah.
do have them, but I
I've
don't
seen
use
it
them.
on, yeah, I've seen it on the video somewhere.
Then we have, then this is my mechanical pencil, which
Very nice. In
I
red
change
and a
the color
shine.
of, and then I have these sketch pens. So,
But the shine makes all the difference.
sorry?
The shine and the shading. The shine,
Yeah,
you know, the highlight and the shading on the side of the sketch pen.
right.
It makes all the difference, that gleam in the middle, highlight.
Exactly. And this is with pencil. That's exactly what
Wow.
I was showing the kids. So this was how to draw 3D objects.
Wonderful. We need a class on this. You should go parallel with the children and ask, my God.
Yeah, for sure. And this is what the earlier class did.
Oh my goodness. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Very nice.
Very well done. Yeah.
It was so fun. So I'll share the links to these two classes. If you're
Yeah.
free this week, please do try them.
Gorgeous.
They're very nice. And once in a while, you should, if you're free on Monday evenings, please attend
Yeah.
kids class.
What time is it?
It's at one is at 4:15 in the evening and one is at 7 in the evening.
Oh, 7.
It's just for an hour.
Yeah. Lovely. Very nice.
Okay, so now in this case now, because yellow is a complement of both red and green, we can easily paint over the yellow. You will definitely get a much warmer red, as if red isn't warm enough because of the yellow base. But here's something you can do also. The freeing bit of this topic is that you don't need to paint within the lines. You can go around outside of the border. And that creates an even more different dynamic shape. So at some point when you're comfortable with visualizing the design like that, you don't even have to draw it with pencil at all. And then you can choose any of these greens. I will be choosing a sap green to make the leaves, and also over here. Over here, I'll make the sap green with the the leaves, the very light sap green with a small brush. And here maybe I can make it bigger. And once this has dried, I could also do a second layer of green on one side, maybe a deeper green, or even with a blue. So for next week's class, we are going to do more repeats, and I would like, it would be nice if you could get a little bit of tracing paper. So some tracing paper, butter paper, anything is fine. Just a couple of, one large sheet would be good. Though we're not going to make a very large pattern, we'll need very small pieces. But just get one sheet of regular tracing paper. Gateway tracing is fine, but even a cheap 10 rupee, 5 rupee tracing paper is fine. Okay. All right. So any questions, anyone?
Everybody is completely taken up with.
Does butter paper work to trace? Butter paper does work if you have no other option, but tracing paper usually has an easier surface to hold graphite. Butter paper sometimes can be a bit of a problem, but you can see through. So look for tracing paper. Okay. Okay, so since there are no questions, I'm going to leave you to it. I can leave the meeting on if you want to, if you all want to continue, and I can just exit so that you all can compare notes. Oh, nice. Beautiful. Oh, you made the checker pattern already? I love that. I avoided making that. Very nice, Amulya. Looking nice. Okay, so I'm going to run off, and I will just leave the meeting, and you all can either chat and you can leave after. And I'll see you next week with tracing paper. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.